My husband Ethan claimed he was stuck in traffic while I was in the middle of giving birth. His GPS, however, showed him at a hotel. Now he's about to discover what true pain really feels like. The atmosphere in the delivery room was thick with a strange cocktail of antiseptic, sweat, and the low, rhythmic beeping of the fetal heart monitor. Each beep was a countdown, a ticking clock. But the one person who was supposed to be counting down with me was missing. Sweat pasted strands of hair to my forehead as another contraction seized my body, a wave of fire that made my muscles clench and my breath catch. For 9 months, I had imagined this. I had read all the books, practiced the breathing exercises, and pictured the perfect supportive birthing experience with Ethan holding my hand. But no book, no class, no visualization had ever prepared me for the gaping, hollow void of his absence. I squeezed my eyes shut, sucking in a ragged breath as the doctor's voice sliced through the pain-induced haze. "You are doing wonderfully, Sarah. Almost there." His tone was meant to be comforting, a steady anchor in the storm, but it was just noise, failing to quiet the hurricane of questions raging in my mind. My best friend, Chloe, gripped my hand, her knuckles white. She whispered encouraging phrases, her presence a small comfort, but her warmth could not fill the cold, empty space on my other side. The space where my husband was supposed to be. Where on earth was he? Before we get to the heart of this story of betrayal and rebirth, I want to say thank you for being here. If you appreciate stories about finding strength, seeking justice, and forging a new path forward, please consider following along. It allows us to keep bringing these kinds of powerful narratives to you. Now let us get back to it. He had called. What felt like a lifetime ago, his voice rushed and staticky. "Traffic is a nightmare, honey," he had said, the words tumbling out. "It is a complete standstill on the freeway. I will get there as fast as I can." But that was hours ago. Every time the door to the room swung open, a jolt of hope shot through me, a desperate wish to see his familiar face. But each time, it was just a nurse with a kind but unfamiliar smile, or another doctor checking my vitals. With every passing hour, the pain of the contractions became almost secondary to the sharp, stabbing pain of his absence. Another wave hit, stronger this time, tearing through my abdomen with a brutal intensity. I bit down on my lip, trying to channel the pain into focus. I had to do this for my baby, for this tiny person about to make their entrance into the world. I could not fall apart. Not now. And then, in a brief lull between the waves of agony, my phone buzzed on the bedside table. Chloe, ever vigilant, snatched it up. "It is a notification," she said, her brow creased in confusion. "From your Find My Car app." I blinked, the pain momentarily forgotten as a fog of confusion settled over me. I had set up the tracker on our shared SUV months ago. It was not about mistrust. Ethan was just notoriously bad with directions, and it had seemed like a practical solution for our life in the suburbs. He had even joked about it, calling me his personal air traffic controller. But seeing that notification now, it felt less like a convenience and more like a warning. "Open it," I managed to rasp. My throat parched. Chloe's thumb hovered over the screen for a split second, a flicker of hesitation in her eyes, before she swiped it open. I watched her expression change. Her eyes widened, just slightly, and her lips pressed into a thin, hard line. Without a word, she turned the phone to face me. The world seemed to tilt. The next contraction began, but I barely felt it. My entire universe had narrowed to the glowing screen. It displayed a map, a tiny blinking red dot marking Ethan's location. He was not on the I-95. He was not stuck in a traffic jam near the downtown exit. He was not anywhere near the hospital. The dot was stationary at a place called the Sleepy Hollow Inn. For a single horrifying moment, my body went numb. My brain refused to compute the information it was receiving. The name of the motel burned itself into my memory, the timestamp confirming he had been parked there for well over an hour. A piercing cry suddenly filled the room, sharp and new. But it was not mine. It was my baby's. The moment I had anticipated for so long, the culmination of 9 months of waiting and wondering, had arrived. My child was here, her tiny, powerful wails slicing through the sterile air like a beautiful, heartbreaking song. But my joy, my profound relief, was instantly suffocated by the crushing weight of betrayal. The medical team moved around me in a blur of activity, cleaning and wrapping, their voices a low, professional murmur. I could not hear them. I was frozen, my gaze locked on that map, feeling the fragile architecture of my life crack and splinter. Chloe gently took the phone from my trembling hands, locked the screen, and set it face down. She knew. She understood that this moment, the first few seconds of my child's life, had to be sacred. But the damage was done. I forced myself to take a breath, to blink, to turn my head as a nurse placed my swaddled baby in my arms. Tiny, perfect fingers curled around my own, their warmth a grounding force. I pulled them close, breathing in her sweet new baby scent, and for a fleeting instant the rest of the world dissolved. But reality is a persistent intruder. Ethan was not here. He was not stuck in traffic. He was not desperately trying to get to my side. He had made a conscious choice to be somewhere else, with someone else, on the single most important day of our shared lives. And he honestly thought I would never know. A slow, quiet rage began to smolder deep within me, an anger hotter and more profound than any physical pain I had ever experienced. I was not just hurt. I was not just disappointed. I was incandescent with fury, but I would not scream. I would not shatter. I would not let him have the satisfaction of my breakdown. Not yet. I pressed a kiss to my baby's forehead, my voice surprisingly steady when I finally spoke. I am going to make sure he never, ever forgets this day. Chloe's eyes met mine, her expression a mixture of shock and understanding. Sarah, what are you going to do? I exhaled, a long, slow release of breath, feeling the first bitter seeds of a plan take root. He wanted to miss this moment? Fine. But soon I would make him relive it in a way he could never have imagined. My husband thought he had gotten away with it. He had no idea what was coming for him. I held my newborn daughter, Emma, close to my chest, my heart hammering with a ferocity I had never known. The warmth of her tiny body should have been my whole world, her soft, milky breaths the only sound that mattered. But my mind was a steel trap, clamped shut around the image of that GPS notification. The blinking red dot was a brand on my memory, a cruel symbol that had shattered the comfortable reality I had lived in. Chloe stood by my bedside, a silent, watchful guardian. She was the kind of friend who intuitively knew when to offer words and when to offer presence. Right now, she was offering her presence, but I could feel the storm of her own anger brewing just beneath the surface. The door creaked open, and I instinctively braced myself, my breath catching. And there he was, Ethan. His face was a masterpiece of contrived concern, his brow furrowed, his lips turned down in a perfect imitation of guilt. But his eyes, they always gave him away. They were too clear, too calm. He had rehearsed this. He had probably practiced his apologetic speech in the car on the way over. He had walked in ready to perform, but he was not ready for me. He approached the bed slowly, placing a ridiculously cheerful bouquet of flowers on the nightstand. "Hey, honey," he murmured, his voice unnaturally soft. "I am so, so sorry." The traffic was just a complete nightmare. I did not answer right away. I just watched him, studying every detail. His shirt was a little creased, his hair slightly tousled, but not in the way of a man who had been stressed and stuck in a car for hours. It was the dishevelment of something else. I had spent 7 years learning the rhythms of this man, the subtle tells of his dishonesty. I had never been more certain of his deceit than in this moment. Beside me, Chloe shifted, her hands clenching into fists at her sides. I could feel her vibrating with the urge to unload on him, but I gave her a tiny, almost imperceptible shake of my head. Not yet. He sat down in the chair by the bed and reached for my hand. I let him take it. The familiar calloused feel of his palm, a bizarre and painful memory. How many times had I held this hand seeking comfort? How many times had I trusted it to guide me? The silence stretched, thick and heavy. I let him sit in it, let him feel the unspoken accusation in the air. Finally, I let out a slow, deliberate breath. Traffic, huh? His Adam's apple bobbed. Yeah, it was apocalyptic. I nodded, my eyes never leaving his. Must have been, especially with that detour to the Sleepy Hollow Inn. The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. His hand went rigid in mine before he pulled it back as if he had been burned. His face, once a mask of practiced sorrow, went utterly blank. The actor had forgotten his lines. What? He stammered, his voice cracking. I tilted my head, my expression unreadable. You heard me. He was frozen for a heartbeat. Then the denials began, clumsy and desperate. That is ridiculous, he scoffed, forcing a laugh that sounded like tearing metal. Why would I be at a motel? Sarah, you just gave birth. You are exhausted, maybe you are. I cut him off, my voice sharp and cold. Do not you dare try to gaslight me. The word hung in the air between us. He flinched. He knew I did not make accusations lightly. He opened his mouth to try again, but I was done with the performance. I have proof, Ethan. My voice was quiet, but it carried the weight of absolute certainty. GPS logs, timestamps. I even have the name of the motel. His entire body went taut. I watched the dawning horror in his eyes as he understood this was not a guess. I had him. He was cornered. I gave him a moment of silence, a final chance to confess, to show an ounce of genuine remorse, to salvage a single shred of his dignity. Instead, he did what all cowards do. He doubled down on the lie. That is not what you think, he said, his voice suddenly urgent and slick. I was meeting a client, a last-minute thing. I just had to pop into their room to get some papers signed. It was nothing. I let out a soft, mirthless laugh, shaking my head slowly. Stop. Just one word. It was enough. His jaw snapped shut. I shifted my gaze down to my beautiful daughter, sleeping so peacefully, oblivious to the man who had abandoned her birth. You were not here, I said, my voice flat, each word a carefully placed stone. You were not here when I was in agony. You were not here to see your daughter take her first breath. You were somewhere else, with someone else doing God knows what. He let out a ragged sigh, raking his hands through his hair. It was a mistake, he muttered, his eyes on the floor. A stupid mistake. I lifted my head, my gaze locking with his. You are right about that. Chloe finally stepped forward, her presence a silent wall of solidarity. You should go, she said, her voice dangerously low. He looked from her to me, a desperate plea in his eyes. Sarah, please. I need time to think, I said, my voice leaving no room for argument. And I need you to leave. Now. For a second, I thought he might push back, try one more pathetic story. But something in my face, some new hardness he had never seen before, must have stopped him. With a frustrated huff, he nodded stiffly and stood. Fine, he muttered. I will give you some space. He turned and walked out, his footsteps echoing down the sterile hallway. The moment the door clicked shut, a wave of pure exhaustion washed over me, so profound I felt my bones might dissolve. Chloe put a hand on my shoulder. You holding up? I swallowed past the thick lump in my throat, my eyes fixed on Emma's tiny fingers. No, I admitted, my voice a whisper, but I will be. This was not the end. This was just the beginning. I had seen him lie to my face, watched him squirm and try to manipulate me when he was caught red-handed. He thought a little time, a few apologies, and I would fold. He thought I would forgive and forget. But he was dealing with a different woman now. The moment I held my child, Something inside me had forged itself into steel. I was not just a wife anymore. I was a mother, and I would be damned if I let my daughter grow up watching her father treat her mother with such blatant contempt. No, I was not going to cry over him. I was going to make sure he learned the true meaning of loss, and I knew exactly how to begin. The door had barely closed behind Ethan, yet the room felt claustrophobic, still thick with the stench of his lies. Emma stirred against my chest, her tiny body a warm, fragile anchor in the storm that was my life. The hurt I had felt earlier had been burned away, leaving behind a cold, crystalline clarity. There was no point in asking why. There was no use in wondering where we went wrong. The betrayal was a fact, as solid and undeniable as the baby in my arms. Chloe sat on the edge of the bed, her gaze searching my face, probably expecting the tears that never came. I was not going to give Ethan the satisfaction. My tears were a resource he no longer had access to. "I need to get out of here," I said, my voice stronger than I felt. Chloe's eyebrow shot up. "Sarah? You literally just had a baby." I exhaled, my fingers gently tracing the curve of Emma's cheek. "I know, and I am going to rest and recover. But I am not going to sit here and let him think he can just waltz back in when it is convenient." She studied me for a long moment, then a slow, dangerous smile spread across her face. "So what is the plan?" That was the problem. I did not have a fully formed plan yet, but the raw materials were assembling in my mind. This could not be an emotional outburst. No screaming matches, no begging for explanations he was incapable of giving. My response had to be precise, strategic, and devastating. It had to unravel him completely. "I need to gather everything," I said finally. Chloe understood immediately. His financials, his work contacts, his social calendar. "You want to bring a man like Ethan to his knees? You do not attack his heart. You attack his image and his bank account." I nodded, a grim sense of purpose solidifying in my chest. "Exactly. And I need him to see it happening, but only when it is far too late to stop it." Chloe's smile widened. "Now you are talking." The next few days were a strange haze of new motherhood and covert operations. I focused my energy on Emma, but every spare moment was dedicated to building my arsenal. I screenshotted every piece of digital evidence. I methodically went through our shared bank accounts, uncovering a hidden world of debt and deception. It turned out the Sleepy Hollow Inn was not a one-time mistake. There were other motel charges, late-night cash withdrawals from ATMs in shady parts of town, restaurant bills from places he had never taken me. It was not a slip-up. It was a lifestyle. He thought he was so clever, so discreet. He had profoundly underestimated me. Chloe put me in touch with a shark of a divorce attorney just to understand my options. I was not going to make any rash moves, but I needed to know the terrain. With this evidence, I can make sure he walks away with practically nothing. The lawyer, a woman named Mrs. Peterson, told me, her tone all business. But if you want to make a more public statement, well, that is entirely up to you. Public. The word resonated deep inside me, sparking an idea. Oh, this was not just going to be public. It was going to be a spectacle. A week later, Ethan came back, this time to our home in the suburbs. He was wearing an expression of carefully rehearsed penitence, but his eyes darted around, searching for cracks in my armor. "I want to fix this, Sarah," he said, his voice low, reaching for my hand. I did not pull away. I let him hold it, let him feel the false hope. I let him believe he was still in control. "I need more time," I whispered, my voice soft and pliable. He nodded eagerly, relief washing over his face. "Of course." "Take all the time you need. I will do whatever it takes." I offered him a small, fragile smile. It was the first one I had given him in a week, and it was entirely fake. It was not a smile of forgiveness. It was the smile of a predator that had just cornered its prey. He had no idea the invitations were already in the mail. The party was already booked. The first act of his public demolition was about to begin. The day of the surprise party arrived with a crisp, autumn chill in the air. Ethan was completely oblivious, believing his friends and family had organized a gathering to celebrate our new baby. He saw it as the perfect stage to perform his role as the doting new father and devoted husband. I watched him get ready that morning, straightening his tie in the mirror, that familiar, self-satisfied smirk playing on his lips. "You seem to be in a better mood," he commented, catching my eye in the reflection. I leaned against the doorframe, my arms crossed. Why would I not be? "We are celebrating our daughter," he chuckled, a low, confident sound. "I know. I just thought, with you needing space. But maybe this is a good thing for us, a fresh start." I held his gaze. Oh, it is definitely going to be good for us. He had no idea how right he was. When we arrived at the rented banquet hall, the room was already buzzing with energy. His parents, his boss, his colleagues, our mutual friends, everyone was there. I had made sure the atmosphere was warm and celebratory, filled with cheerful chatter and clinking glasses. Ethan soaked it all in, shaking hands, accepting pats on the back, playing his part flawlessly. It was almost a shame I had to bring the whole performance crashing down. Almost. At the height of the evening, when the mood was at its most festive, I stepped onto the small makeshift stage, holding Emma gently in my arms. The room quieted, all eyes turning to me. "I just want to thank all of you for being here tonight," I began, my voice clear and steady. "This has been such an emotional time, and the support from our friends and family has meant the world." Ethan stood beside me, beaming, nodding in agreement. He thought this was his moment of public redemption. He was wrong. As a small token of my appreciation, I have put together a little something to share with all of you. A little look back at the most significant day of our lives. I stepped aside as the large projector screen behind me flickered to life. Ethan turned, a look of pleasant curiosity on his face. The slideshow started exactly as everyone expected. Sweet photos of a newborn Emma, pictures of her tiny hands and feet, a few shots of me in the hospital, looking exhausted but happy with Chloe by my side. The crowd awed and murmured their approval. Then the images changed. The first was a crisp, clear screenshot of a GPS map. The name Sleepy Hollow Inn was perfectly legible. It was followed by a close-up of a credit card transaction. Then, a call log filled with a number I did not recognize. The final image was another screenshot, this one showing the time he had been at the motel, the exact time I was giving birth. The appreciative murmurs in the room died, replaced by sharp, indrawn breaths and confused whispers. People started exchanging uneasy glances. Ethan went completely still beside me, his body rigid. "Sarah, what is this?" he hissed, his voice a low, sharp crack of a whip. I turned to face him, my expression placid. "Oh, just a little proof." His parents were staring at the screen, their faces a mixture of confusion and dawning horror. His boss, his friends, every single person who had just been congratulating him now saw him. They saw him for who he truly was. He swallowed hard, his face turning a sickly, pale color. This is a mistake, a misunderstanding." "No," I said, my voice quiet but carrying across the silent room. "The only mistake was thinking I would not find out." He looked around the room, his eyes wide with panic, desperately trying to find a way to spin this, to reclaim the narrative. But it was too late. The evidence was irrefutable. I leaned in close, my voice a whisper meant only for him. "You wanted to skip the most important moment? Fine. But congratulations, Ethan. You just lost everything." His breath hitched, his eyes darting around the room like a trapped animal. I stepped back, rocking Emma gently in my arms, my face a mask of calm. The silence in the room was suffocating, and then, as if on cue, Chloe started clapping. A single slow, deliberate clap, then another, and then, one by one, a few others in the room joined in. It was not applause. It was a judgment. the final echoing nail in the coffin of his carefully constructed life. He had wanted to play the part of the loving husband and father. Instead, he had just been exposed as the biggest fraud in the room. The room stayed unnervingly quiet, the only sounds the rustle of clothing and a few hushed, frantic whispers. Ethan stood frozen, a statue of a man whose world had just been publicly demolished. All the color had drained from his face, and his hands twitched uselessly at his sides. He was so accustomed to being the one in control, the one pulling the strings. Now he stood exposed, stripped bare of the respectable image he had cultivated so meticulously. I held Emma closer, her gentle weight a grounding force. This was not just about getting even. This was about accountability. This was about ensuring the man who chose a cheap motel over the birth of his child faced the public fallout of that choice. He blinked rapidly, as if waking from a nightmare. This is not what it looks like," he stammered, his voice hoarse. I almost laughed. Even now, with his lies projected on a 10-foot screen for everyone to see, his first instinct was to deny. Chloe folded her arms across her chest. "Oh, I do not know, Ethan. It looks exactly like what it is." A ripple of agreement went through the crowd. His colleagues avoided his gaze. His parents were whispering furiously to each other, his mother's face pale with shame. His boss, a stern, no-nonsense man named Mr. Sterling, looked utterly disgusted. Panic finally broke through Ethan's denial. He turned to his parents, his voice trembling. "Mom, Dad, you know me, I would never." His mother's lips thinned into a hard line. "Do we, Ethan? Do we really?" The question was more damning than any accusation. His father, a man who rarely spoke, just let out a heavy sigh and scrubbed a hand over his face, as if trying to wipe away the image of the stranger his son had become. Ethan swallowed, his eyes darting around for an ally, an escape hatch. "I was under a lot of stress. Work has been insane. I made a mistake." I tilted my head, my voice dangerously soft. "A mistake," I repeated. "A mistake is forgetting to take out the trash. A mistake is buying the wrong brand of coffee. A mistake is not abandoning your wife during labor to have an affair." The gasps were louder this time. He knew he had lost the room. For the first time all night, I saw genuine fear in his eyes. Mr. Sterling cleared his throat, taking a half step forward. "Ethan, you told the office you were dealing with a family emergency that night." Ethan flinched as if he had been struck. "And yet," his boss continued, his voice laced with ice, "here we are." I watched the final piece of the puzzle click into place for Ethan. This was not just personal, it was professional. I had made sure of it, personally emailing the invitation to Mr. Sterling with a cryptic note about celebrating family values. Now Ethan would reap what he had sown. He turned back to me, desperation making his voice thin and reedy. "We can talk about this at home. Just us. Please." I exhaled slowly. There's nothing left to talk about. I reached into my purse and pulled out a thick, crisp envelope. "This," I said, holding it out to him, "is for you. You will be hearing from my attorney." He stared at the envelope as if it were a venomous snake. This was not a rash decision I had made in anger. This was the culmination of days of planning, a move I had been preparing since the moment I saw that blinking red dot in my hospital bed. He hesitated, his fingers trembling as he finally took it. "Do not do this, Sarah," he pleaded, his voice cracking. I met his gaze, my own steady and unflinching. "You already did." The finality of my words hung in the air, extinguishing the last flicker of hope in his eyes. His mother stepped forward, placing a firm but gentle hand on my arm. "You did the right thing," she murmured, her eyes filled with a profound, weary sadness. Not for me, but for the son she no longer recognized. I gave her a small, tight nod, swallowing past the lump that had formed in my throat. Despite the betrayal, this was not an easy victory, but it was a necessary one. I adjusted my hold on Emma, pressing a soft kiss to her forehead. "Let us go home," I whispered. Chloe was instantly at my side, her arm protectively around my shoulders as we made our way to the exit. Behind us, Ethan stood motionless, the architect of his own ruin, his world crumbling around him. And for the first time since this whole nightmare began, I felt a wave of something that felt almost like peace, because I was not just walking away from him, I was walking toward a new life. As I stepped out of that venue into the cool night air, with Emma nestled safely against me, it felt like I was breathing for the first time in a week. Chloe walked beside me, shaking her head in a kind of stunned admiration. That, she said, was legendary. I managed a faint smile, though the emotional weight of what I had just done was still settling. It had to be. She glanced back at the building where I could only imagine Ethan was still standing, paralyzed in the wreckage of his life. I do not think he will ever recover from that. I adjusted my grip on my daughter, looking down at her perfect, sleeping face. Good. But my plan was not finished. Ethan had spent years playing a game where he made all the rules. He had treated my love and my trust as disposable commodities. Now he was going to get a masterclass in what it felt like to lose, and I was not going to make it easy for him. The following days were a whirlwind of legal paperwork and pointedly ignored phone calls. Ethan tried to reach me, of course. The messages started as simple, almost arrogant texts. "We need to talk." Then they became more frantic. Finally, they devolved into rambling, desperate voicemails filled with a cheap, hollow regret. I did not listen to a single one. Instead, I focused on the next phase, the house. Mrs. Peterson had already drawn up the paperwork to secure my full ownership. In his arrogance, Ethan had left most of his financial affairs in my name, making it remarkably simple to legally prove the home was mine. His finances? A house of cards I was about to blow down. My quiet investigation had revealed a mountain of secret debt, personal loans, and maxed-out credit cards for expenses he could not possibly explain. He had been living a double life on borrowed money, always assuming I would be his safety net. That net was now gone, but the true centerpiece of my strategy was not about taking what was rightfully mine. It was about making him understand, on a visceral level that would haunt him, the life he had so carelessly thrown away. The final act was another gathering, though this one was entirely orchestrated by me, an intimate evening to celebrate new beginnings. I invited everyone who had witnessed his downfall, friends, family, and colleagues. People who had once seen me as a quiet extension of him would now see me standing on my own. When he inevitably showed up, uninvited, I made sure he got a front-row seat to my new reality. He watched as friends embraced me, as people laughed at my stories, as I moved through the room with a confidence he had worked so hard to suppress. When he finally cornered me, looking hesitant and broken, I simply raised an eyebrow. "This is a private party," I said smoothly, taking a sip from my glass. "I do not believe you were on the guest list." His throat worked as he swallowed, shifting uncomfortably as he felt the eyes of the entire room on him. I wanted to talk. I tilted my head, studying him. He looked different. The suit was the same, but the arrogance that used to wear it was gone. Good. "You should go," I said, my voice gentle but firm. All the anger that had fueled me was gone, replaced by a calm, detached pity. He lingered for a moment, his hands clenching and unclenching, searching for the right words to reverse the inevitable. But there were none. He had made his choices, and I had made mine. As he turned and walked away, melting back into the night, I exhaled softly. A strange sense of closure settled over me. Revenge was not about destruction or hate. It was about reclaiming your power, and justice had never tasted so sweet. As Ethan vanished into the darkness, the atmosphere around me seemed to lighten, the very air less heavy. The background noise of the party, the warm laughter and clinking glasses swelled to fill the space he had occupied. I stood still for a moment, letting the finality of it all wash over me. He was gone, not just from my party, but from my life, Chloe appeared at my elbow, her presence a familiar comfort. "You okay?" she asked, her voice uncharacteristically soft. I turned to her, a slow, genuine smile spreading across my face. Better than I have been in years, and it was the absolute truth. For so long, I had been carrying the suffocating weight of his lies, the constant, dull ache of his betrayal. But now, he was just a ghost, a fading memory in a story that was no longer about him. I looked around the room at the faces of the people who had stood by me, who had believed in me when I was struggling to believe in myself. This was not just a party for my baby, it was a celebration of my own rebirth. Chloe nudged me. "Come on, you earned this." She was right. For the first time in what felt like a lifetime, I let myself relax. I let myself enjoy the moment. The rest of the evening was a beautiful blur. I had conversations that were not centered around Ethan or his needs. People congratulated me, not just on Emma, but on my courage. I was no longer defined as Ethan's wife. I was just Sarah, a woman who had been shattered but had meticulously glued herself back together, stronger and more intricate than before. As I mingled, I caught snippets of conversation, words of support, of admiration, and a few of barely concealed shock. I could feel their unspoken questions hanging in the air. Was I okay? Did I regret the public demolition? Did I miss him? The answer to all three was a resounding no. Later in the evening, I found a quiet corner to catch my breath, watching the celebration from a distance. Chloe joined me, handing me a glass of sparkling cider. "You did it," she said, her voice filled with pride. I took the glass, my thoughts swirling. "Yeah," I murmured, "I did." She leaned against the wall beside me. "So, what is next?" It was a valid question. For years, my life had been defined by my marriage, my role as a partner in a union that turned out to be a sham. With that chapter closed, the pages ahead were blank. "I start over," I said, the words feeling both terrifying and exhilarating. Chloe's lips curved into a wide, proud grin. "And how does that feel?" I glanced down at Emma, who was sleeping peacefully in a carrier against my chest, her tiny fist curled under her chin. Liberating. As the party began to wind down, I saw Ethan's parents lingering near the door. His mother looked shaken, his father lost in thought. I knew I owed them nothing, but a part of me felt they deserved some small piece of closure. I walked over to them. His mother met my gaze, her own filled with a complex mix of shame and sorrow. "I had no idea, Sarah," she said quietly. "Not until that night." I nodded. "I know." She swallowed hard, glancing at her husband before looking back at me. "I'm not making excuses for him. What he did was unforgivable. I'm just so sorry you had to go through it alone." But I was not alone, I said, and the words felt powerful and true. I had Chloe, I had my family, and most importantly, I now had myself. "I appreciate that," I told her, my voice steady, "but I am not the one who truly lost something here." A flicker of sad understanding crossed her face. She squeezed my hand once before she and her husband turned and left. When the last guest had departed, Chloe helped me pack up. "You are really something else, you know that?" she said, stacking the last of the plates. I chuckled. "You keep saying that." "Because it is true," she insisted. "You could have let this destroy you. Instead, you took the high road with explosions, but still, you walked away with grace." I smiled at that. In the end, that was all I had ever wanted, to reclaim my life and my dignity. As I stepped outside into the crisp night air, I felt a profound sense of rightness settle deep in my bones. I had spent so much energy holding on to anger and betrayal, but now it was gone. I was free. And as I looked down at my daughter, so safe and perfect in my arms, I knew with absolute certainty that the best part of my story was just beginning. Standing outside in the cold night air with Emma cradled in my arms, I felt a deep sense of stillness. The world around me was quiet, and for the first time, so was the world inside me. The burden of his deception, of a love that was never real, had finally been lifted. But just as I thought the night was over, one final scene remained. Chloe nodded towards the edge of the parking lot. "You ready for this?" I followed her gaze and saw him, Ethan. He was just standing there, leaning against his sedan, no longer the confident, charismatic man he had once been. He looked diminished, his posture slumped, his face shadowed with a regret that was months too late. For a second, I wondered what he was thinking, if he replayed his downfall in his head, if he finally understood the magnitude of what he had thrown away. But then I realized it did not matter. I adjusted Emma in my arms and walked toward him, my steps sure and steady on the pavement. He straightened up as I approached, but I let the silence stretch between us, forcing him to stew in the uncomfortable weight of it all. "You really did all this?" he finally murmured, his voice a ghost of its former self. I tilted my head. "You gave me no choice." He shook his head, a sharp, bitter exhale. "I know I messed up." The understatement was so profound it was almost funny. Messed up did not even begin to cover it. But anger was a wasted emotion now. "What do you want, Ethan?" I asked, my voice even. His eyes flickered to our daughter, a softness entering his expression that made my stomach turn. "I want to fix this." "You cannot fix something you have shattered into dust," I replied. He flinched, and for the first time I saw raw, undiluted desperation in his eyes. "I was stupid," he admitted, his voice cracking. "I was selfish. I was not thinking." I raised an eyebrow. "And you have only just realized that now." His silence was the only answer I needed. I sighed. "Are you looking for absolution? Do you want me to say something that makes you feel better about what you did?" "Because I won't." His jaw tightened. I want another chance." A small, humorless laugh escaped my lips. "Another chance?" I repeated. "You had a chance every single day of our marriage. You had a chance when I called you from the hospital, begging you to hurry. You had a chance when you were sitting in that motel room, knowing exactly where you were supposed to be. You had a universe of chances, and you threw every single one of them away." He swallowed hard, looking down at the ground. I took a deep breath, feeling the absolute finality of this conversation settle over me. This is not a movie, Ethan. This is not a story where the guy messes up and gets a second act. This is real life. And in real life, choices have consequences. He looked up at me then, and I saw the raw fear of a man who finally understands that he is utterly, irrevocably alone. The life he had taken for granted was gone, and he was never getting it back. I adjusted my hold on Emma, pressing a kiss to her forehead before meeting his eyes one last time. "You are going to have to live with what you did," I said simply. "That is your reality now." With that, I turned my back on him and walked away. I did not look back. There was no need. The past was behind me, and the future, for the first time in a very long time, was all mine. The silence that followed my final conversation with him was not just peaceful. It was powerful. It was the quiet that comes with true, indisputable closure. For so long, I had been caught in a cycle of making excuses for him, of hoping he would change. But people do not change unless they want to, and he had only wanted to when he was out of options. By then, I had already moved on. The next few months were a quiet process of healing and rebuilding. I adjusted to my new life as a single mother, finding unexpected joy in the small, simple moments. There were difficult nights, of course, when the exhaustion was overwhelming and loneliness whispered doubts in my ear. But even then, I never once regretted my decision. I had finally learned the difference between being alone and being free. And I was free. I did not seek out news about him, but it found me anyway. It came in whispers from mutual acquaintances. A friend mentioned he looked lost at work. Another commented that he had become withdrawn, a ghost of his former self. His boss had formally passed him over for a promotion. His finances, without my support to prop them up, had collapsed entirely. I did not feel sorry for him. I felt nothing. He was learning a hard lesson. Some things, once broken, can never be put back together. One afternoon, my phone rang. The name on the screen made my heart give a little lurch, not of longing, but of weariness. I answered. Silence. Then his voice, tired and defeated. "Hey, what do you want, Ethan? I wanted to hear your voice." I laughed, a short, humorless sound. "Now you do?" "I know I messed up," he said, his voice raw. "I lost everything." "You did not lose me," I corrected softly. "You let me go. I do not know how to fix this," he whispered. "You don't," I said simply. There was a pause. "I love you." I closed my eyes, letting the words land and disintegrate. He thought they still held some magic, some power to rewind time. They were just empty sounds. "No," I said, my voice steady and clear. "You loved having me. There is a difference." The silence on the other end was heavy and final. He had nothing left to say, and neither did I. I ended the call and put my phone down. I did not block his number. I did not need to. The most profound lessons are learned in silence and absence, and I could tell he was finally learning. His calls stopped. The texts disappeared. His name faded from conversations. His downfall was not loud or dramatic. It was a slow, quiet erosion, a man coming to terms with the fact that he had lost something irreplaceable. And me, I had gained something priceless, myself. The peace I felt was absolute. I had walked through fire and come out the other side not burned, but forged. My revenge was not the public spectacle or the financial ruin. The best revenge was my happiness. It was the quiet mornings with my daughter, the easy laughter with my friends, the simple, beautiful life I was building on my own terms. It was a life he could never be a part of. And that was a victory that would last forever. End of story.